myself?
I'm afraid
I
so.
I can look at it.
Well, the camera's coming
I can
from.
look at you twice.
Let me say as long as you're here, Michael. Go for it. And throw you in.
Test.
So let's have our brief mind-shifting meditation to put the mind in a more neutral place and shift gears. And try to refocus, rebalance, reposition the mind so that it's in a neutral place, disengaged from all of the thoughts and busyness and activities of the day. So check that your spine is straight, sitting comfortably, breathing through your nostrils. Beginning with an exhalation, count 21 rounds. Breathing gently and being aware of the sensation of the air entering and exiting. let's take a moment to check in on our motivation. Check in as to why you're here and what you hope to gain or benefit, what your intention is. Take a moment to set your highest aspiration for being here this evening. Try to be very clear in your heart and mind what you hope to achieve in the highest spiritual sense. You can recall, bring to mind the holy being that you feel closest to, and offer that to them. Ask for their blessing and guidance in that respect, their help. And see them happily agreeing and feel them offering you that blessing and staying close to you. See if you can feel them sitting close to you, or perhaps visualize or feel them above the crown of your head, small form. Okay, homage to all holy beings everywhere. Thank you for coming. So, I'm going to probably be a little shorter tonight because my kids are home alone. They're on spring break next week, so it presents more of a challenge. I think I'll have to skip class next week to accommodate the wee ones. I'll have to see. My wife now has a Tuesday night work commitment, so it presents more of a challenge. But we'll find a way to see it through, right? So, welcome. So we're on the second part of the course called Death and the Realms of Existence, right? And last class, we talked about the existence of three different realms, right? Form realm, formless realm, and desire realm, right? And we're in this place called the desire realm. You could think of it as this dimension or this reality, right? And he said, is it a place? Are we on the left side of the curtain and someone else is on the right side of the curtain, and we have to get through the curtain to get to the next realm, or find the magic door to walk through to move between realms, right? Is it like finding the door to paradise and then you're there? So, no, right? Right here, right now, two realms exist that we can confirm, right? Human realm and an animal realm. We can confirm the existence of both of those things directly, right? And the same is true of other unseen realms. They exist here as well. And the difference between the realms is simply perceptual, the ability to perceive and the ability to experience it based upon whatever type of being we happen to be, right? So we talked about that last time. But this realm, this desire realm, we're in this realm due to the state of our mind. This is fundamentally a broken realm and a dysfunctional realm. And the fact that we're in this realm reflects or indicates that we have fairly dysfunctional minds. Dysfunctional in what sense? Dysfunctional in what context? I mean, we're intelligent, right? We have jobs, we have lives and cars and houses and all the rest, right? So how is it that we're dysfunctional? From a higher perspective, from a spiritual perspective, we are not pursuing the causes of happiness and the sources of happiness, the real causes of happiness and the real sources of happiness. We're pursuing things which we think will make us happy and which we think will bring us lasting peace, however they don't. So from a spiritual sense, all of the things which we normally pursue in our lives in this realm will never bring a lasting happiness and a lasting peace. They cannot. It's impossible. Right? And so, I mean, somewhere in our lives, whether we're, perhaps not when we're 20, but either when you're 30 or when you're 40, or bless you, or 50, or somewhere along the way, we kind of get a sense of something funny going on here. Why can't I ever be happy in any kind of lasting fashion? Why can't I ever truly be happy throughout the day on a regular, consistent basis every day, right? And then for myself, it was a case of, well, I need a faster car, then I'll be happy, I need a better job and more money, then I'll be happy. Oh, I need a prettier girlfriend, then I'll be happy. Oh, I need a bigger place to live, and then I'll be happy. Oh, I need to socialize more, and then I'll be happy. Oh, I need to socialize less, and then I'll be happy. Oh, I just need to balance these things in a different proportion, and then I'll be happy. And, on and on and on it went, right? As I think it does for most people. And somewhere along the way, we either say, that's just how it is, and I'll settle into a routine of some sort, where I accept that, it's ups and downs and all arounds, and inconsistent, and sometimes good and sometimes bad. Or we say that, you know what, there's got to be something better than this. There's got to be something higher than this. There's got to be something else which is possible other than constant disappointment and the constant roller coaster ride that is the life in this realm, right? I mean, we've been giving it our best shot for I don't know how long, right? And I think the reason that we're here and the reason that people find a spiritual path is because they are really looking for some true answer, some real answer to the source of happiness and the cause of happiness, and how to have a better life and a more gratifying life, a happier life, right? As the Dalai Lama says, right? Everyone wants to be happy, right? In a simple way, to be free of pain and to have good experiences and pleasure. So, we've tried all of these different modes of living here in this human realm, and sooner or later we come to the realization there's something defective. I mean, I always thought it was about me. I always thought there was something wrong with me. Like, why can't I ever be happy? God, what's wrong with me? I can never be happy, right? I got the car and it's fast, but then, that car over there looks pretty good, right? I mean, that's actually maybe a nicer car. Maybe I don't want that car, not the car I got, right? Or, I got this nice apartment and it's spacious and lovely, but, there's things about it which aren't quite right. And, on and on and on with every aspect of life. You meet the perfect person and they're so beautiful and so wonderful and they're intelligent and charming and witty and fun, and then they turn out to be true, or whatever, or unpleasant. And so on and on and on, right? And for a long time, I felt like I had a problem, or I was the problem, or I was doing something wrong, or I somehow couldn't figure it out. Like everybody else figured it out, but I couldn't figure it out, right? I know there are happy people out there. I know there are people who have their lives together who are great all the time, right? I mean, that is sort of the bill of goods that we're sold in our culture, right? I mean, we are sold the notion that it is possible to have a happy life and a good life and to be positive and upbeat, pretty much all the time. And if you just do the right things, buy our product, you can have this, right? So, it's nice to kind of come to a place where it's like, oh, it's not personal. It's not about me. And for me, that came as a result of embarking upon the spiritual path and studying and realizing that the problem does not lie within me personally. The problem lies within this realm and within the nature of our existence as human beings and beings of the desire realm, right? And so the motivation for starting a spiritual path is to fix it, is to fix the problems implicit within being this kind of being. Right? The motivation for being a spiritual path is to get out of a life and a way of being which is just permeated by problems all the time, on an ongoing a predictable basis, right? So embarking upon a spiritual path and understanding that this realm is implicitly defective, right, leads to the question of, well, then what? Then what do we do? We're living here, right? How do we have a better life here? Well, we can pursue a spiritual path to try to have an incrementally better life, or to try to radically change the state of our existence, and to say, I would rather exist somewhere else, paradise, heaven, whatever you want to call it, where I can just be happy forever, where I can be in a great place, in an ultimately positive, good, happy place forever. So, and that's our motivation, and that's our intention here, right? I mean, it's not like, if I could just find a couple more hours a day to exercise a little more, I'd be happy. If I could just eat a little more salad, my life would be better. If I could just, go to a cooler gym, then somehow life, and on and on and on, right? So none of it works. More ice cream, less ice cream, more salad, less salad, more exercise, less exercise, more yoga, less yoga. I mean, there are obviously benefits to any of these things, but they don't bring any kind of meaningful, lasting happiness, right? So all these slight adjustments in our lives aren't going to fix it. The place itself is broken and doesn't work right? And so we have to find a radical method to get out of here. It's like, it doesn't matter. And some people try destructive radical methods to get out of here. Let's just do drugs, or let's get drunk, or let's move out to the middle of nowhere where there's no one around and I can just be by myself and not have to deal with anything, right? And so there are a lot of different ways that, in normal, ordinary human sense, people try to escape, right? And so from a spiritual perspective, we're trying to escape in a different way. It's a lot harder and a lot more effort, but it's a controlled, permanent undertaking, right? Whereby we can change the nature of how our mind functions and the nature of our perception to exist in a different realm, long term, permanently, right? So we want to physically remove ourselves from this realm. Moving to Arizona is not going to fix things, or moving to Alaska, or it doesn't matter where, or the islands, or the beach, or the problem is we bring our baggage with us, right? Baggage being us. If only happiness implicitly existed at the beach. I often think, oh, that hot dog stand at the beach would be an awfully great way to live. If I just had a hot dog stand or an ice cream stand or whatever at the beach, wouldn't that be a sweet life, right? There is no. The problem is I bring myself there in my mind, right, and all of my issues, and so it's not the answer, sadly. Although I sometimes still fantasize about it. So So we are out for a radical transformation of our experience, of our perception of the realm that we live in, right? We have a mind that functions to perceive this realm. We have senses and a mind that perceives to function in the human realm. If our mind functioned and perceived differently, we would simply be perceiving ourselves in a different realm right now, right? If I had a mind that functioned in a much purer, subtler, more refined fashion, I would be a being of that realm, right here, right now, right? So we're not trying to just force ourselves to be a little happier, or to be a little chipper, or to just put a brave face on things, or look for the silver lining in bad circumstances. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to fundamentally get to the issue of, why do the thoughts that I think come into my head? Why am I thinking the thoughts that I'm thinking, and where are they coming from? Why does the notion, Matt's a human male, pop into my head? And so the nature of our perception, the nature of our world, is that it's pervaded by ignorance. And we think that I'm just taking in, I'm the radio receiver and everything else is the broadcaster, right? I'm taking in all the messages and all the identities and all the names that are being transmitted to me from outer things, right? And experiences and events. And in fact, it's backwards. I am taking in data through my senses, and my mind is processing it and interpreting it, and my mind is then conceiving and asserting thoughts that say, "Oh, that's a human being, and that's a male, and that's Matt, and I'm this, and he's over there, and I'm over here." And the mind functions so quickly, and the thoughts arise so seamlessly that we do not recognize them as the assertion of our mind or the expression of our mind, right? Nor do we pay attention to our mind closely enough and carefully enough and subtly enough to be able to say there's this constant stream of ideation arising that I have no control over. And it just arises, and it's there, and those are my thoughts, and therefore that's my mind, and that's my reality, and that's my world, because that's what's filling my mind. I mean, my experience and my reality is the stuff that fills my mind, right? I mean, if different stuff was filling my mind, I'd be having a different reality, right? And that's really all we're talking about, okay? So certain stuff pops up in the mind, and it is our world and our experience, right? And it is possible to cause other stuff to arise in our mind and fill our mind. It is possible to cause valid thoughts and ideation of, things are glowing in light. These are holy beings. These are angels. These are, everything is holy. Everything is pure. Not in a fantasy way, right? I mean, like for a dog to think the thought, if it could, I'm a human being, right? And I'm in this room as a human being, and aren't those lights lovely? And I wish I could turn the dimmer switch down a little. I mean, it would be for a dog to think that, right? I'll say this. A dog's mind doesn't work that way, but a human's mind does, right? And a human's mind can say, "Oh, it's a little bright in here. Let me turn the dimmer switch down," right? But just like a dog's mind can't do that, our mind can't think everything is radiant and glowing and subtle and holy and pure, right? Our mind doesn't have that capacity any more than a dog's mind has the capacity to say, "That's a dimmer switch and it's bright, and let me just turn the dimmer switch down." It's exactly the same thing. The dog's mind has a certain capacity and limitation. Our mind has a certain capacity and limitation, relative to higher beings or holy beings, right? Why does a dog's mind have the ideation that fills it? Why does our mind have the conceptualization and the ideation that fills it? Why does a holy being's mind have the conception and ideation that fills it? It's caused. It arises for a reason, because of the energetic impulses that constitute that being, right? That constitute the body and mind of that being, right? So, our job, our goal, is to collect the causes, the energetic basis, the seeds, the energetic impulses, which will ripen into spontaneous concept and ideation that fills the mind to say, everything's holy and pure and beautiful and wonderful and blissful. Validly. So that's our goal, and that's what we're after here, and that's why we're doing this, and that's why we're on this path, and that's why we are engaging in these classes and everything else we do, right? It's because we want stuff to come up in our mind, which is great, instead of the crap that comes up in our mind at times or however often, which isn't great. And that's the point of spiritual path and practice is to find the true causes, to find the true basis as to how to do that. What do I need to do or say or think right now to create the causes so that my mind will be filled with these kinds of amazing, wonderful, blissful, holy, divine experiences, validly. Just like I'm validly having experiences right now, which were caused previously. Okay, so that's where we're at, and that's what we're after, right? So this is death in the realms of existence, right? We talk about the hot hells and the cold hells, and there's many levels of the form realm, there's many levels of the formless realm, and how many trillions of insects there are, and we can do all the genus and species of all the beetles and whatever you want, right? But I think you get the concept. There are infinite types of beings, really. I mean, I was at the museum with my kids over a holiday the other month, and it was just like, I can't believe how many beetles they've got on a pin. Every single one is different. It's got a different name. It's crazy. That's just like one little type of beetle. So, and these are the things we can see. I mean, Lord knows, God knows how many countless millions and billions of different kinds of beings exist that we can't confirm in this realm. Insects and animals and fish and and then similarly there are countless types of beings that we don't see with the senses that we possess, right? I mean, if you need any confirmation of that, I mean, just look at some of the freaky pictures that science shows. I mean, I used to bring them in, these weird pictures of animals that no one's ever seen before, where it's just like a big mouth with no eyes and no ears, and it's totally strange. Or you get little microscopic pictures of like, well, this little worm lives in the hair follicles of your eyebrows only, and it looks like some like horrible monster with claws. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? So, I mean, I think when one looks at what science has discovered with the tools and mechanical means which we possess, which we keep adding to year after year after year, it's not a big stretch to say, well, yeah, there's lots more they're going to find too, which they haven't found yet. So that's all, right? And we would say that there are many realms, many dimensions, many, many, many different types of beings, right? Some of which are horrible suffering, and some of which are incredible paradise, right? And so, you talk about 8 hot hells, or 8 cold hells, and then there are near hells and partial hells, and you can go into the whole thing. The point is that if one has a mind which perceives heavy suffering like that, that becomes one's reality. And it's not that you just have a bad day psychologically. There are some teachings that say, you have a bad day psychologically, and that's kind of like hell, right? This is not the point. The point is that there are realities, just like this is a reality with a physical experience, right? Dog has a physical experience. We have a physical experience. There are other realms, hell realms, for example, where there is a physical reality. So it's a body associated with a suffering mind. And there are many descriptions of them. Take one as an example, which is just a smooth, flat ground. Think of the ocean. Think of like a still ocean as far as you can see in the horizon, in all directions. Except this is hot, and it's covered with beings, which have nowhere to go, and all they do is run around being burned, being burned up. And one of the qualities of hell realms is that you don't die. Like in this realm, you get hurt badly enough, you die. And then you have your next life. One of the qualities of being reborn in a hell realm is that your physical form doesn't die until that karma has worn out and that lifespan, the karma of that suffering and the nature of those perceptions are finished, so that life is over and one has a perceptual shift to a new death, rebirth reality, right? But for the duration of a lifespan in a hell realm, you could be on this burning ground, which is endless essentially in all directions with nowhere to go, just running around with masses and masses of countless beings being burned up. And your body just keeps regenerating. You just have the sensation of burning and burning and the pain of being burned. Continues. I burned my finger a little tiny bit, on the pot. I was making soup for the kids before I came over here. And I was pouring it, and I touched I got a little too close to the handle, and I touched a hot part of the handle. I was like, yow. And my finger's still throbbing, right, from a little teeny tiny burn. And it's like impinging upon my mind and my consciousness from a little teeny tiny thing. I mean, it's not like it's blistering, it's nothing, it's a tiny little thing. So, try to imagine like an existence where you are literally being consumed by fire continuously, nonstop, right? And you never die. I mean, heavy, heavy suffering, right? So there are a lot of those things to talk about, but it's not really what I want to emphasize, right? if we have existed for infinite time, we've had countless births in higher and lower realms, right? And so, people who kind of, let's say, sometimes people have a romantic notion of death, right? Oh, dying is the great adventure, the great unknown, the last great adventure, the last great unknown. And, won't it be a great adventure to die and see what comes next, if anything, right? Really a wrong way of thinking, in that most beings are in suffering realms. This rebirth in a realm like a human realm, where there's a reasonable balance of pain and pleasure, is extremely rare and extremely unusual. The vast majority of beings engage in non-virtue primarily, and circle in lower suffering realms. And it's not hard to understand that, even if we think about our day. I mean, we're not bad people, right? I would say that the people in this room are probably very good people, and very virtuous people, and very ethical people. I mean, among the most virtuous people, perhaps, right? And if we think back about on our day today, it's like, how many instances of truly benefiting anyone did I engage in? How much of the day did I look after myself? How much of the day did I try to do things for myself to make money or get money or do whatever? And how many, out of all of the thousands and millions of thoughts today, how many conscious thoughts did I have? Let me try to help everyone around me, right? Consciously or subtly. And so even just examining our own day as among the most spiritual beings here in this realm, it's a pretty small proportion, right? I mean, think about all the people out there who aren't spiritual, aren't thinking about virtue or ethics or anything else. They're not setting themselves up for a great future. So that's really the point, not to dwell on it, right? So, deep down inside every human being or every being is the knowledge that there can be great suffering after death, right? There's some kind of deep reflex or deep impulse to not want to die, right? And where does that come from? It's not like people walk around saying, doesn't matter if I get hit by a bus today, I'm cool with that. You take someone and you put them on the ledge and you go like this, they're going to pull back and they're going to try not to fall, right? It's not like somebody says, yeah, I don't mind if I shoot myself, or I don't mind if somebody kills me, or we are all spending our lives trying to stay alive, And it's not for no reason. It's because on some kind of deep, subtle level, we know that there's huge suffering. There can be, and typically is, huge suffering existence after death, right? And so it's almost kind of, it's deeply ingrained. It's this deep reflex that we have, deep subtle reflex we have to not to want to die, right? And to keep ourselves alive in this state for as long as possible, right? And we fight it at anyone and everyone else's expense, right? So, so better to talk about the positive reinforcement of death and other realms of existence, right? You can go negative with it, or you can go positive with it. You can say, oh, you're going to burn in hell if you're not a good person, and if you're not virtuous and you're not ethical, so you better be virtuous and you better be ethical, right? Sometimes negative motivation is helpful to people. But, positive motivation is good too, which is to say, look, be ethical, be pure, be virtuous, and attain paradise, right? Attain the end of suffering forever, right? Isn't it better to focus upon what we can do in a positive sense, right? The goal is to get to total bliss using a path which is blissful, right? We want to pursue a blissful path to bliss, where the method brings great happiness along the way, and the ultimate result is total happiness, right? There's this, I grew up with this Christian thing of like, well, you have to suffer, you have to suffer to be happy, or you have to really suffer on the way to heaven or something. This notion of you can only get good things by suffering, and that's not the point. The path is not about suffering to get something good later. The path is about collecting the causes for goodness and happiness all along the way, and having those results ripen all along the way. And so as one progresses along the path, one's mind and one's life becomes happier and happier and better the closer we get, right? And so then the mind starts to become this beautiful, happy place to live. It's like, one is carrying one's baggage everywhere they go. So to have a clean mind and a happy mind is quite nice. It's to go to work or go to a pleasant or an unpleasant environment and to not be bothered by it, but to think pleasant thoughts and to have some kind of uplifted feeling and some kind of joyous feeling and some kind of, to have a state of bliss brought on, to have a state of goodness arise, regardless of where one is and what one is doing, right? So almost anything can send you off into kind of this mood of deep bliss, and the path to get there is pleasant, and the place you're headed to is even better. And so, anyway, so you have to have both motivations. There's hell realms which you want to avoid, and there are the paradise that we want to enlightenment that we want to achieve, right? Okay. All right. So, so we're going to talk a little bit about death meditation. Since this is death in the realms of existence, we won't just talk about the realms of existence. Let's talk about death, right? So if we're going to talk about death, I think there's some popular misconceptions to dispel. Especially in the West, a lot of books have been published about, the bardo, and death meditation, and death practice, and a lot of it is really a disservice to people, and that it isn't really useful. It doesn't really work most of the time, and people can pin their hopes and dreams and aspirations upon it to unfortunately to no avail, to no benefit. There are these. There are a lot of books that have been published, spiritual books, which have been published about death practice and death meditation. And some say, well, when you start to die, focus on this color of light for a while, and then focus on that color of light for a while, and then focus on the flickering for a while, and then, focus on a bright flash of light, and then something magical is going to happen, and you're going to end up somewhere else, and it'll be great. Where other books say, well, you can just sort of direct your consciousness, as you're dying to paradise, and then everything will be great. And, a lot of teachings like that have come to the West, right? So these are popular teachings, but you have to understand that transforming this realm into a different realm has to happen while you have a functional, clear mind. It requires a clear, functional, focused mind to be able to accomplish that. Right? A lucid mind. And it takes years and years and years of consistent, devoted effort to be able to do so. Right? It is not the case that one has collected vast amounts of karma, which all of a sudden somehow magically disappear, right? Because you saw blinking purple lights for 5 minutes as you were dying or something. Okay, it doesn't work. It's not true. Okay, so we have to do it while our mind is sharp and while we're able to sit. We have to engage in mind trainings and practices so that we can actually affect the change of our perception that we're driving towards. And so, if we make that effort, if we engage in those consistent practice with a sharp, focused, lucid mind, we can pull it off and we can achieve a paradise, right? And it is possible to do it in this lifetime. And if we don't engage in those practices to change our mind into a different kind of mind, change our perceptions into different kinds of perceptions, if we don't do that, then we must enter into the normal human death process, and we will go through an ordinary human death process, right? So, and which is basically the mind starts to break down. The brain as an organism is based on electrical currents firing. As the body breaks down at the time of death, the physical organism of the body and the brain starts to malfunction and short circuit, right? And it becomes unstable, right? And it sets off mental hallucinations and perceptual hallucinations. as the mind is short-circuiting and misfiring, causing causing very unpleasant, very, very frightening experiences, which are valid, real perceptions. Right? So, and there's a special kind of pain that that a being undergoes at the time of death, which is unlike any pain which is experienced during the time when they're alive. And so all the scriptures talk about the pain at the moment of death, and it's normal in the death process. And so the point at which the mind is actually starting to break down, we're unable to think clearly. We're overcome by waves of fear and terror and emotion, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, right, people say, well, do these meditations at the time of death, blah, 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 blah. I mean, think about if while you're alive here right now, somebody came along and said, you know what, I'm going to just take your foot away from you right now. Don't mind me. I'm just going to remove your foot. I'm just going to detach it and, take it. It won't be yours anymore. You'd be pretty freaked out, right? You'd be pretty upset. Well, this is what's happening at the time of death. Your entire body is being torn away from you. Everything that you identify as yourself, the entire form that you identify as yourself, is being ripped away from you, right? And people, and normally it's a freak out situation, which is like, oh my God, what am I? What will I be? And his body is disappearing, and it's not going to be me. And it's a big issue, right? So we have if you think about how we've lived, we spent 40, 50, 60 years fundamentally focusing upon this body, cleaning it, dressing it, feeding it, combing its hair, cleaning its nails, our ears and the teeth. And we spent a good portion of our time and energy and thought process thinking about how to care for this body, right? And all of a sudden, it's ripped away, right? The main focus of our entire life is ripped away from us, right? Very unpleasant. Very hard, right? Very destabilizing. Right? So to think that we're going to be cool at that moment, and that we're going to have a mind which is balanced and focused and able to do some kind of precise, subtle, sophisticated meditation to do whatever, is not very realistic, right? So the mind goes into a special place. It's a kind of a horrible place. It's a kind of rage, in fact. It's a kind of rage around losing the thing that we're most attached to. So the mind becomes completely imbalanced and disturbed and enraged that the thing that it cares about most is being taken from it, right? It's like the Lord of the Rings, Gollum, like precious. It's like, my precious, where's my precious? I can't think about anything else, right? My precious, like we're like that with our body, my precious, right? And it's being taken away from us, right? And so you don't want to wait till the last minute to try to come to terms with that and try to deal with that. We don't want to just kind of go la 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 up to the time of death and all of a sudden go like have a freak out because we lose the thing we care about the most. Right? So, all these teachings that you do these special practices at the exact moment of death, or right before the moment of death, or right after the moment of death, physical death, they're not realistic, They're not grounded in the reality of a normal person's life or practice or capacity. So, in theory, it's possible, but to think at that moment when the mind is enraged and destabilized and short-circuiting, the brain is short-circuiting, and everything is wildly out of control, to think that at that moment we're going to have some precise ability to refocus and direct things, it's just not realistic. So, in practice, it's impossible. We're totally frightened. Worst nightmare you've ever had, the worst pain you've ever experienced physically. To think and to imagine that you can go into a deep state of meditation and see emptiness when you didn't do it, in 50 years on a cushion of having conducive conditions is fairly delusional. And so the people who read these books and they're just like, well, I'm not going to meditate regularly. I'll just, I'll do POA at the time of death, or I'll do this certain practice at the time of death, and then everything is okay. It's just, it's ridiculous, and it's a disservice, right? So.
If you meditate a lot, is there a chance you can do POA?
So we have to talk about death meditation and how to properly do death meditation and how that fits into that, right? So if you're doing a good meditation, you're getting your mind into a state where you feel like you are going to die tonight, right? And it's hard to do. Like to think, you know what? I'm going to die tonight, right? Like I'm ready to die tonight. Right? I can die tonight. I will die tonight, right? So that's a good death meditation. That's a good death meditation practice. To go through the day with the attitude and the idea that today is my last day. These are my last hours, right? That is actually the first. I'll say the first. That is the foundational death meditation, which must be done before any more advanced practices like POA or others are undertaken or attempted, right? And it's hard to do. Like if I mean, we've probably heard these things before. I think somebody says, you know, go through your day, reminding yourself that you're going to die today. And I can tell myself, yeah, I'm going to die today. But then I go like, no, I'm not. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but I don't believe it. Right? I mean, try to actually go through the day. You try to even go through an hour. Try to go through 5 minutes. You know, where you actually, on some emotional level, believe that you're going to die today, or it's as likely as not. Even. I mean, forget the certainty, right? I mean, setting aside even that feeling of certainty about I'm going to die today. Just try to generate 5 minutes of reasonable belief that I could die today. Hard to do, right? Very hard to do. But that is what we're talking about when we talk about doing a good death meditation, right? That's a Buddhist death meditation. So forget about the flashing lights, you know, and transference of consciousness and blah, 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 because if we can't do a good basic Buddhist death meditation, then we're not going to be able to do the other stuff. So what is the goal of death meditation? What is the goal of proper death meditation, right? It puts us in a special frame of mind. It creates a special state of mind, a special frame of mind, right? What is it? I'm dying today, right? I don't have any time to waste. What is the most important thing for me to be doing right now? How am I going to spend, I got 3 hours left, I got 8 hours left. How am I going to spend my last 3 hours? How am I going to spend my last 8 hours? Right? Every hour of life becomes a conscious choice to pursue the highest spiritual activity, hopefully. Now, I mean, you know, if you want to talk about be here now, it's very popular to be here now, right? This is how you be here now. You know, the way you be here now is by saying, all I got is today. And I better be real clear and real serious about what I'm doing with it, because this is all there is. And that's how you be here now, right? So it's like every hour of our conscious life, we're examining our activities, our choices, our pursuits, right? Saying, do I really want to be doing this as I die? Do I really want to be engaging in this activity right here, right now, as I'm dying? And if the answer is no, then you don't do it, right? Which is very hard, right? Also, I mean, it ties in with renunciation, right? Like if I say to you, you got 8 hours to live, knock yourself out. What are you going to go do? I mean, what it comes to mind, right? It's like sex, a great meal, the beach, bottle of brandy, right? I mean, you know, what is the normal thing that the mind does, right? I mean, this is the issue. You see, the issue is that if we say, what am I going to do with my precious life? What am I going to do with the last precious hours of my life? Pleasure would be good, right? Wrong. That's why we don't do a death meditation. That's why we don't make the most of our life. That's why we don't actualize our spiritual goals. You know, it ties in with basic renunciation, right? What is the most important thing to be doing with my life? What is the most important thing for us to be spending every hour of our day on, right? It is very challenging to really deeply, viscerally believe the most important thing for me to be spending my day on is perfection, bodhicitta, right? Loving kindness, you know? meditating to see emptiness. Very hard to do that, to say, this is more important than anything else, and I'm going to spend every waking moment and every free hour trying to do these things. Very hard, right? So our normal impulse is not to allocate our free time to those things. I mean, even if we know we're going to die in 8 hours, it's not necessarily a first thought or impulse to say, let me go do something spiritual. Let me go be a bodhisattva for 8 hours before I die. It's not the natural impulse, right? For most people. The natural impulse is, go gratify myself somehow. And so, big problem, right, for our spiritual path and practice. So this is what death meditation is about. This is the idea of death meditation. This is the point and purpose of death meditation, is to say, get your pride. We need to get our priorities straight. If this is your last hour, do you want to be eating food? Do you want to be having sex? Do you want to be drinking? Do you want to be going to the beach? And if so, then those are your highest aspirations, right? Be clear with yourself. Let's be clear with ourselves. If our highest aspirations are truly to attain some spiritual realization or some state before we die, or to get as close to paradise or enlightenment or assure a higher rebirth, call it what you will, right? I mean, we checked in at the beginning of class, right? If that's truly our heartfelt aspiration and intention, well, you would damn well think you'd want to do it in your last hour alive, right? So there's a couple of things going on here, right? It's a real reality check about where our priorities are and what we want to allocate our life and our time to. And after we do that reality check and get clear with ourselves about, if I did only have an hour to live or 8 hours to live, what would I do with it? Get clear on that. We're going to get clear on that first. But after we get clear on that, we're going to keep coming back to it. So it's not, I find it's not enough to say, constantly remind myself I'm going to die, because then I'm like, more cookies, or whatever, right? So, it's got to be, what's my priority? What's my priority? What's my priority, right? So it puts us into this state of mind, right? And it feels good to be doing this practice. Doing this practice leads to a clearer mind, less clutter in the mind, less detritus in the mind, because this is falling away all these things which we have made priorities, right? I need to do this. I need to do these 35 things, today. Well, this is my last day. I don't need to do 35 things. What's the most important thing? Let me go do it, right? So it's like that, right? So we cut the crap out of our life, right? I mean, 99.9% of our activities is crap, and we just cut it out. And you say, I'm not doing those things. I'm doing these other things. Because today is it. Today's all I got. There is nothing else. Dying tonight, not waking up. Right? So, you get rid of all this stuff, and we buy all these things, and we take care of all these things, and we keep all these things we don't need, and they don't serve us, right? It just takes time and energy, right? Get rid of possessions you don't need. Get rid of activities you don't need, right? Distractions. I mean, sadly, we spend a very high percentage of our lives pursuing distractions, rather than higher spiritual goals. And it's a great challenge to shift gears and to change those priorities, right? So it's liberating in a way to say, I'm only pursuing my highest goals, and I'm letting all the rest go, right? So, interestingly, one of the advices is do all the ordinary mundane things you want to do. You want to go to the beach? Go to the beach. If you're going to die today and you want to go to the beach, God bless, go to the beach, right? See if you have a good time, right? It'll be fine for a while, and it won't be fine for a while. And after you've done it for a couple of days, you'll be like, maybe this isn't the thing I want to do right before I die, and it's liberating in many respects. You want to write poetry, you want to travel, do it. Get it out of your system. See the reality of it. I mean, I actually personally have spent my life that way in terms of saying, when I was younger, saying, I want to travel around the world. I want to go climb a volcano. I want to go skydiving. I want to go scuba diving. I want to go biking, through the mountains, the equator. I want to, do lots of things I won't go into. But, after however many years of pursuing all these things and going like, okay, that wasn't it. At some point, come to, oh, okay, grateful to have found higher spiritual aspirations and goals, which I do feel are it, right? And which do bring great happiness and satisfaction. Like when I was interviewing for a job some time ago, I came across a job for a position, and then I met somebody the other week who was looking for a job. I was like, oh, let me hook you up with this job. This would be perfect. I interviewed with this company a couple of months ago. I took something else. You'd be perfect for them. Let me connect you two. I connect the two of them, and it feels so good, right? It feels so good to help somebody. It's like, wow, I'm really happy. I'm really uplifted. I got this buzz that's carrying me a long way from helping somebody. It's nice, right? So, all right. So if we engage in this real Buddhist death meditation, which is, what are my highest priorities right now? Only pursue my highest priorities right now, right? Life gets better and better, even in a mundane sense, right? I mean, think about it. If you're just saying, I'm doing what's really important to me in my heart. I mean, even if this whole spiritual attainment thing is nonsense, right? To just be living in congruence with your true feelings in your heart. To say, I'm living and doing the thing that's most important to me every day. Wouldn't that just be a better life anyway? Right? So, imagine what life would be like if we kept that thinking up daily, like for 6 months, right? It would be like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be true to my aspirations and true to my goals and true to my values, right? No more junk, right? So think about how many things we drop, right, with this state of mind. Think about how many things we wouldn't do if we had this state of mind. Like, I'm going to die in a couple hours. I'm not going to watch that movie. Would I rather watch Game of Thrones next week? Like, die. Let's see. That's a hard one, right? So, it's renunciation. Are we thrill-seeking, or are we trying to attain, our higher aspirations? And unfortunately, we have this sense that we're going to live like it's inborn, built into the human condition. This sense of, I'm just going to keep living. There is no end. I don't have it. My mom is 80 years old. She's going like, I don't think I got a long way to go. She's got high blood pressure. She's got a stent. She hears ringing in her ears. She's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to lift my arm, but I'm great. I got a long way to go. I mean, it's not personal. It's normal to think, I'm not going to die. I'm going to be alive tomorrow. It's just the way it's the way this realm is. And every day we think we're going to be here tomorrow, forever. And it doesn't matter if you just had a heart attack. You still think you're going to be here tomorrow. So if we have this state of mind, it's an antidote to that. It counteracts that. Because when we think, I got forever, we don't make efforts to attain our spiritual goals. Because there's always tomorrow. There's always, I'll get to it later. I'll do it next week, because I have next week. Next week never comes, typically, right? Tomorrow never comes, typically, whenever we say I'm going to postpone my practice or postpone my, my spiritual life, right? Typically doesn't ever roll around. So, anyway. So if you become a good death meditator, you're going to want to go try all the things that you ever want to do. Play guitar, go to the beach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I mean, why not die doing the things you want to do? And then at some point you feel like, you know what? It's not lasting happiness. I need to find higher lasting happiness. And typically we're here already. Yes.
You see, the materialist has a counter argument available which hasn't yet been voiced, which is they could say, well, I can go to the beach and succeed at it. And that's not an aspiration, that's an accomplishment. Whereas the would-be meditator or death meditator is living in a world of aspiration, which is another way of saying you are in pursuit of something you haven't which you may never accomplish, even assuming that we would agree that it is there to be accomplished. So
Yeah.
really what you call highest spiritual aspiration is
Yeah.
the sacrifice of the possible in a frivolous pursuit of the impossible, or at least the unproven.
So it's an interesting idea, right? Go for the cherry pick it. Go for the easy score, right? It's like, look, if I go to the beach, I know what I got.
It's the bird in hand.
Yeah. I mean, if I go to the beach, it's a sunny day. I got to swim. I got it was nice this, it was nice that, right? And, if I go meditate, if I go engage in the six perfections, if I go behave like a bodhisattva, what do I get? Did I just get the promise of something better in the future? Is that it?
Right. You predicate a fanciful reality that I have no proof actually is attainable, whether I pursued it or not.
Yeah. Is it just a pipe dream? Is it just a story? Right? Is it just a nice fantasy?
There are these guys who are Civil War reenactors who are out there every weekend in Gettysburg wearing costumes and muzzle-loading rifles, and they think that the highest achievement is to recreate the Battle of Gettysburg, where man's courage and conquest over his own weakest nature was achieved.
Yeah.
And they really believe it. And then there are the guys who do it at Waterloo. And how can you prove that they're wrong?
Yeah. So I think therein lies the importance of personal confirmation. Because if you go to the beach and you swim, you've had the personal confirmation of the benefit of that and your experience of that, right? And if you go help people and get some positive experience of it, if you engage in bodhisattva activity or the perfections and you get some immediate positive benefit from it or some later positive benefit from it that you can directly confirm, then you have that to weigh, you have that in hand, as it were, to say, yeah, there's a benefit to that, and I've had it, and I know what it is, and I see it, and I can value it on whatever scale, right? And the same is true of meditation practice. I'm going to meditate, and is meditation this aspirational pipe dream where I'm never really going to get anything meaningful? I'm just going to make a lot of effort, and for what, right? And so again, it's a question of personal confirmation. Is one able to develop a meditation practice where they can have direct personal confirmation that there is something good happening there and some benefit there? And so this is why it's so precious and rare to actualize that. Because it isn't something somebody can walk in off the street and hear this conversation and go, what a great idea, I'm going to go do that. Right? I mean, it takes training, it takes effort, it takes personal confirmation and of resolve to even be interested in wanting to do it, right? And to want to continue to do it. So, and that's why there's a graduated path to enlightenment, long rim, you do it in the right order, you get some confirmation along the way, you build upon that. And if you think about how much time, and how much effort, and how much study, and how much training is necessary, right, to get to a place where you have all the information you need, right, and we've made efforts from our own side to actually go out and be ethical and virtuous and engage in bodhisattva activity, and to see whether it produces anything or not, tangibly and meaningfully, right? And to go and start a daily meditation practice and learn how to meditate properly, and then do it consistently to see if it has brought a result and what that result is. To then be able to say, yeah, these things are valuable or they're not, right? And then if one does say these things are valuable enough to be my top priority in life, then how can I keep them front and center as my top priority in life? And that's the point of the death meditation. The point of the death meditation is to say, look, if you are interested in renunciation, if you are interested in spiritual goals and spiritual things, then keep them front and center and pursue them and allocate your life to them. Allocate your time and resources to them. I mean, that's from a spiritual perspective, but even putting that, the meditation and the bodhicitta aside, even just as a way to live life, right? To say, if you're going to die today, you be here now and use your time well. So whether you're doing it on a spiritual level on a practical material level, still useful. Yeah.
But in fairness, we have to say that the guy who opted not to pursue spiritual goals,
Yeah.
but went to the beach,
Yeah.
and then a racetrack, and then had a big meal and so forth, he has the same defense available to him. Say, you know what, I'm going to go for a swim now because it's available.
Absolutely.
It's
And
in
it's
the now,
highest priority now.
and there's a wonderful experience to be had in
That's
taking
right.
a swim and
Yeah.
having a good meal and so forth,
Yeah.
even if it never led to
Yeah.
enlightenment.
And I would offer that that is the modus operandi for most people's lives. Most people's lives are, how should I say, most people's lives revolve around choosing the next gratification. Right? Okay, that's normal, ordinary human life. Right? And so, in this context, we're saying, if you want to attain certain spiritual goals and certain spiritual realizations and outcomes, you have to put time and energy into it and not waste our lives and make sure we're allocating our life appropriately to do those things, right? And an important basis for that, or a very powerful tool and a very powerful method to accomplish that is death meditation. By engaging in this death meditation, then we are refocusing our practice. It's like, okay, I've got 17 initiations and, lots of sadhanas to do and lots of commitments and lots of practices and, I'll do a little bit here and I'll do a little bit there and maybe some of this one and maybe some of that one. And maybe I'll go to this teaching and maybe I'll go to that teaching and, it's just the same. Most people don't practice, but even among those who do practice, practice is often as cluttered and disorganized as our apartments. I mean, it's just like there's all kinds of stuff everywhere. It's not particularly organized. Not particularly,
So what about the bodhicitta on the beach, or dedicating on the beach like crazy? I mean, is that sort of?
This is a mental. We're working with our mind, right? So there's nothing that says you have to sit in a box, looking at a white wall, thinking a prescribed series of thoughts, right? You could be at the beach thinking, I'm going to die, and what do I want to be doing with myself right now? One's highest practice at any given moment may be to walk down the street, with the blazing and dripping going on or something, as you're going through your regular life. So
Wait, you're saying picture hell Rome? Is that what you're saying?
no, that's another thing. That's different thing. It's a different teaching, but the point is that one can have an internal practice going on when one is going to work or walking down the street or driving the car. Or it's what are you thinking? What is in one's heart? What is in one's mind? What's going on within one's being as one is living one's life? I mean, this is a practice and this is a training of body, speech, and mind, right? And it's very easy to mostly make it about outer stuff, body and doing. Where did I go? What did I do? Did I, feed somebody? Raw karma is movement of the mind and what follows. Okay, it's mainly about movement of the mind. Everything else is motivated by movement of the mind. So it's our thoughts and the movement of the mind, which is of primary importance and primary focus, not movement of the body. Right, and where the body is going and what it's doing and all the rest. So it's like that. So we can have 8 meditations that we're doing halfway. The point is if you're going to die tonight, even with your spiritual practice, get serious, get focused, and do the most important thing, do the most powerful thing, do the most meaningful thing, right? Find the heaviest practice, find the most karmically powerful practice, right? And get it down to 1 or 2 heavy, intense practices, which will help us when we die, which is frankly, Guru Yoga and Tantric practice, which are basically the same thing, So, don't try to do 13 different practices and a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, and a little bit of the other, because you're not going to make progress spiritually. If you're going to die tonight, you want to be doing the most powerful, heavy spiritual requirement practice that you can be doing, right? So, yeah.
Here, like, for example, the difference between if you die tonight and if you think that you have more time, because then let's take the ACI. You do a lot of meditation which are not the highest practices. You do a lot of study which doesn't necessarily go so high. It's just build up slowly, kind of planning for, I don't know, doing series retreat like 10 years from now or something. So, there is something here when you consider
It's a
kind
very,
of plan long time.
yeah. So it's a very good point, and it is a graduated path, right? It is a graduated path to enlightenment. You've got to learn A before B before C, right? However, we're always meant to be striving for a higher practice, right? It's very easy to sort of say, oh, I learned this meditation practice, and I'm comfortable with it, I'm going to do this for the next 5 years. And I'm not going to move on to a higher, more powerful practice, right? So the idea is to learn the material and advance, learn the material and advance, learn the material and advance. And it's necessary to learn the material in the proper order and then advance, right?
I found a meditation online that says if you say the Surya mantra 900,000 times a night, starting from like September 2nd or on a specific Hindu holiday, you'll drink a drink of immortality and live forever.
Sounds cool. But if that were the case, you'd have lots of immortal people, right, running around. You would think,
If they
right?
actually believe in this, 1100,000 times is a lot, isn't it?
Seems like.
Just
Yeah.
wanted to say I found that online.
So, you raise a good point, which is that, think about the future you, right? In terms of planning ahead, are you going to be, if you die a year from now, or a month from now, or a day from now, are you going to be on your deathbed cursing, yourself, because you didn't do what you were supposed to do and what you could have done? Here you are now in a bad state because, you waited and you didn't do it, right? Have some compassion for your future self, right? You will be on your deathbed at a certain point, and you will be looking back saying, shit, I didn't do it. What was I thinking about? Why didn't I do it? I could have done it, and here I am now, I'm done, and it's too late. So, yeah, you have to think ahead. You have to think strategically, and you have to learn the material and move, and always go to a higher practice, without being delusional, right? That somehow I'm some great master and I can skip over everything or whatever, right? You have to gain what you need and then move on, right? So, like that.
It's funny that the tactical class feels that in a way for the opposite, because we're talking about the past, our past self and future self as simply a projection that doesn't exist, and it's used for us not to feel it as self, like that we like putting it's like in the context of course number 11 of replacing ourselves with other and caring for other more than we care for ourselves. So why to identify more with the future self which doesn't really exist, and it be projected on other people's future selves, which because it's all kind of the same in a way. There's no separation, or even going to the thing before our body was exist was sperm and oval, and it was not us surely, so I care for this sperm and ovum rather than other people's sperm and ovum. So it's kind of funny. It is like it's used in the opposite way here in a way.
There's a gallery in Soho called The Time Is Always Now. I always like that sign. So, if we get our life streamlined by having a good death meditation, right? The heart is clear, the mind is clear, life is happy. And Jason Campos says that, then you die a good death. Then you can die a good death. You can die right. And the people who go into death right are the people who day after day and year after year have this awareness and do this practice, right? They've been living hour after hour as if they're going to die tonight, right? And so when it happens, they're like, yeah, I knew that. Of course, it's no different. How is it different than any other day when I felt like I was going to die? It's no different than any other day when I felt like I was going to die, right? I took care of that years ago. I'm not afraid to die. I'm die happy, right? They're contented. They've achieved what they had to achieve, right? They have the knowledge that they practiced fully. So that's real death meditation, right? So if you practice that way as you die, you have a chance to then do some extraordinary things at the time of death. There are advanced practices one can do at the time of death. However, if one has not done this basic death meditation first, then the mind isn't ready. And you can't make progress on the more advanced practices like Po or something else. It's not, without this stabilization of being able to go into death happily, contentedly, comfortably, familiarly, the mind is not in any kind of place to be able to do anything else except spin out of control and freak out and go nuts and and just be in rage and pain. So that's real death meditation. And if you practice this way, then as you die, you have a chance to do these extraordinary meditations. However, if you practice this way, then you're not going to die because you will have actualized your path. If you go through your day saying, today is my last day, I'm going to do the most important things, which are the spiritual things, it's my spiritual goals and aspirations, then you will attain them in this life before you die. And you won't see any flashing lights of different colors, and you won't have to do transference of consciousness because you will change your reality while you're still alive. Right? And you will attain your spiritual goals while you're still alive, and you won't go through a death process. Right? You won't die. You won't have an ordinary death. Right? All right? So, we actualize transforming this realm. It's basically, if you decide to do this kind of death meditation, it quickly leads into living the perfections and tantric practice. I mean, it's just a ripening that occurs, right? It's a natural progression. And so by living this way and leading a life of the perfections and tantra, then and really doing it all day long, then one quickly actualizes their goals. And then this realm is transformed into a different realm. So they say you'll be expelled from the ranks of the scriptures say that you'll be expelled from the ranks of men and reach the ranks of dogs. Not gods, dogs. Right? Meaning, everybody will think you're crazy. Why? This is the desire realm, where the main goals and the main priorities are food and sex. And you ain't doing that. Right? We gradually divest ourselves of all these unnecessary activities and possessions, and we start to look unusual to other people. Why aren't you pursuing the things that I'm pursuing? Why aren't you interested in the things that I'm interested in? Why don't you want to talk about all the inane things that I want to talk about? Why aren't you devoting your life to all these meaningless pursuits that I'm pursuing? Right? So you don't have time for that if you keep your motivation in mind. You're going to die tonight, right? So you start to look strange to other people in the desire realm. So, and if you've made it to this desire realm, which, if you're an ordinary person, then your mind is messed up and your body's messed up and you must suffer and die, right? It's going to break. Your body's going to break, right? The mind is going to be filled with wrong ideas and cling to wrong ideas, wrong ways of living. And as we start to fix ourselves, then we're out of place in this realm. We stick out like a sore thumb in this realm to the ordinary beings of the desire realm, right? We look strange to the denizens of this realm. So, at some point there'll be a disparity between the way we're living and acting and the other people in this realm, because all our actions are crazy, spiritually, right? And ours aren't. We're thinking loving thoughts and helping others all the time, and they're looking out for themselves all the time. Right? We're pursuing high spiritual goals, and they're working 50 weeks a year to get 2 weeks off. Not a fair trade. To work 50 weeks a year to buy a washing machine, to be able to wash a lot more clothes rather than having 2 or 3 pairs of clothes that you wash by hand and then have most of the day free, It's kind of backwards, right? So, to hate other people when they succeed, to be jealous of other people when they have good things, it's crazy. We have this just endless litany of ways of being that's crazy, right? That's ordinary. Okay, so it's important to know how to die right, and it's important to know what happens when you die, right? It's important to know what happens when one dies, even just in an ordinary conventional sense, and what one should do for other people when they die, and what one should do oneself when they die, right? So it's important to study those things, and it's important to be aware of those things. So the death meditation we've talked about so far is death meditation for life, for living, for daily life, right? So concentrating on the most important things happily, right? Not being weighed down by possessions, activities, concerns. That's practice for living. That's death meditation to live by. And then there's dying. There's actually dying, right? As you enter the death process, there's meditation you should do as you enter the death process. And so that's found in Lojong text. And you can practice it anytime. You can practice it when you're sick, when you're depressed, if you have a serious illness or disease, if you have relationship problems, somebody leaves you, your boss is crazy, you can't sleep, you have insomnia, all those situations, this meditation is great. Okay? And also meant to be used when you die. So all of those other instances are basically practicing this meditation so that you're well versed in it, so that when you die, which happens less frequently than all the other problems, you are well versed and well practiced and able to then apply it and engage in it, right? So this is from Geshe Chikawa, the text. It's a beautiful Lojong. And he did it on his deathbed. There's a record of his students standing around as he was dying. So the meditation, basically when you die, there's this very special pain that you get. And every being that dies gets it, whether it's a dog or a cat or a cow or us. There's a special pain associated with physical pain associated with death. And you can see it if you ever watch dying people, you can see that they start to have some kind of unusual experience like that. So as you're dying, and you're feeling this pain, you meditate that all the pain of all the dying people in the world comes into your heart. So it's a kind of imagining almost like a physical, you can visualize sort of a physical ball or physical form, see the pain in the physical form in your heart, your own pain, and it's sort of a physical form in your heart. And then as you're dying, you call in and feel all the pain of all the other dying beings in the world coming into your heart. And by taking that away, and you're taking that away from them, you're removing it from them and taking it into yourself, right? So that they are free of that pain of death, right? Free of that suffering of death. So this is a very specific exercise that we imagine to eliminate the pain of the entire world and all the death in the world, right? As you're dying. I'm dying, and this tremendous physical pain and suffering, I know it. Let me at least use this for some purpose to remove all the pain in the world, all the pain of death in the world, right? Let me do something useful with this pain, right? And so the same thing, whether someone walks out on you or you find out you have cancer or whatever, it's the exact same thing, You can take in all the pain of all the people with cancer in the world, or all the people who've just been jilted, or all the people who have insomnia, or all the people who are depressed, or whatever it is, right? And so you pray that all the pain that all those people are feeling around you are sucked into the pain as you experience it, so that they don't have it, right? I'm taking it on so they don't have it. And by my taking this pain, may it be removed from other people. And in the case of death, may I die with this pain so that it doesn't exist in the world anymore, right? So it's a very holy way to die. It's a very holy practice. So if you don't practice it throughout your life, you probably won't be able to do it when you die. If you're not doing this practice with all the regular things in your life, all the loss and suffering and pain of your life, you're almost certainly not going to want to do it when you die. Right? So important to practice throughout all the other problems and sufferings of the world, right? And then similarly, falling asleep. To practice this as one is falling asleep, right? Imagine that you're going into a death consciousness, the unconscious state of death, and you practice the death meditation as you're falling asleep. So you also practice the same death meditation of taking all the pain, physical pain, and mental pain of death into yourself as you're falling asleep. can imagine that's some kind of black thing in your heart. And then it's very important that, though, that at the time as you're falling asleep, that then you blow it off with a burst of light and a flash of light. You don't fall asleep with it, but that you see a brilliant light, golden light, or brilliant white light, which then destroys all the pain in existence, and it's gone and it's clean. Right? So it's very important to do that. You're not supposed to fall asleep with the pain in your heart. All right? Just before you fall to sleep, it's just like a flash bulb or something. Boom, and it's gone. Right? All the pain is gone. Your pain and their pain. So the difference between waking consciousness and sleep consciousness is very similar to the difference between consciousness when we're alive and consciousness as we're dying. It's analogous. So if you're doing that as you're falling asleep, it'll be a natural reaction at the time of death to be doing it also. It'll be just a natural reflex that asserts itself at the time of death, right? And so Geshe Chikawa, in the Lojong text where it's describing this, Geshe Chikawa taught this, and he did this. That was around 1100 AD, and it's written in the scriptures. He's a great Lama, teaching this his whole life, and he's dying there, and his students are standing around his deathbed, and he's saying, he's doing it, and I'm trying. I'm seeing all the pain of the world. I'm taking on all the pain of the world. I'm taking on all the pain of the hell realms, and I'm going to go to the hell realms to take away all the pain of all beings, and I'm going to So he's doing this practice, right? This very powerful practice, and he's going like, it's not working. It's not working. And the students are like, what's wrong? Are you okay? He's like, it's not working. I keep trying to take on all the pain, and I just see angels and paradises and Buddhas coming, and I can't, there's no pain to take on. All I'm seeing is, it's paradise.
So about doing death meditation, that sounds so tricky to do it when you're tired. Or to go into a meditative state when you're really tired sounds really tricky.
Imagine how tricky it is when you're dying.
Oh.
Easier than when you're dying. But that's the point, isn't it? The point is it's a mind training. The point is, and it doesn't have to be just when you're falling asleep. You can do it when you're having a bad day at work. You can do it when your boss is going nuts. You can do it when your partner's a pain in the butt. You can do it when your kids are a pain. You can do it when the kids are crying or unhappy or suffering. Lojong can be applied to anything. It's the same practice regardless of what it's applied to. Right? And so, in terms of the profundity of the practice, this is a very profound practice to apply it to death. And it's a very powerful way to die. And it's a very holy way to die. And so, we have a death practice for living. Right? We have a death meditation for living, and we have a death meditation for dying. Right? Both of which are very important and very powerful. If you think about, given that we're going into Easter this weekend, Good Friday coming up, if you think about, Christ dying on the cross, same principle, dying on the cross, taking all the sins of the world as he dies on the cross. That's exactly what we're talking about.
And he had enough power to do this to get resurrected.
So very holy practice, that's really what we're talking about, right? As one is dying, to have the holy thoughts and the holy state of mind and the holy practice that says, as I'm dying, I'm taking away all the suffering and all the pain and all the sins of the world and all the problems of the world, and they're all dying with me. Right? And of course, you destroy them with the burst of light in your heart.
So when dying, is that part of it too? To destroy it with a burst of light?
Sure. Yeah, always with the Lojong practice. Yeah, the point is that one is through bodhisattva intention, removing the suffering and the pain of other beings, and through the power of one's practice and one's bodhicitta and one's holy aspiration, one is then purify all that negativity into a pure state. The goal is not the Christian notion of I should suffer so that they don't have to. The goal is to purify the negative karma so that it doesn't exist anymore.
Devavi Devakum Sunam Yeshe Sukshe Sunam Yeshe Vijumare Dhamma Kuni Dhammasho.
See the holy being that you invited earlier, becoming smaller and brighter, melting into an orb of light and into your heart, blessing you. For the power of our intention and our practice and our conversation, may we quickly attain all of our spiritual realizations, our highest goals. May we quickly end all suffering for ourselves and every living being in this very life. Thank you.
Thank you.
So no class next week.
Last
Spring.
week after,
No class the week after. It's spring break and I have to deal with the children.
we get to deal with the children.
Yes, I have the pleasure of dealing with my little angels. It's true. And so we'll see you in 2 weeks. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful Easter and Passover and much bodhisattva activity and much awareness of maintaining one's highest spiritual practice and intention and engagement throughout. Yeah, thank you.
I do a lot of tumbling, one of the most horrible days ever. Yeah, I had like bureaucratic nightmare. I lost my green card and I have to fly Thursday. And I have to do that, I have to get an approval. But the immigration office computer doesn't work for 3 days. So I cannot do that, and I have to pay for a company that didn't do it. And I ran twice into the office and get more information. I checked the website.
And I gotta take like all immigration problems in the whole world.
I did a lot from there, but you know, for a short while.